Hi, I'm Ashton, lead strategist here at Step Change Marketing, and today I wanted to talk you through Brandbox, a marketer's ultimate toolkit, and just do a walkthrough of one particular aspect. Today what we're going to be talking about is something called brand archetypes. I love brand archetypes. They're very useful, and they actually arise from some work that Carl Jung did. So Carl Jung gets the credit for distinguishing brand archetypes but not inventing them. Essentially, archetypes are the way that humans tell stories. Consistently, whether you're an Indonesian hill tribe or a Hollywood blockbuster, the same characters appear. And what's important about that from a brand or a marketer's point of view is that if you can identify a brand archetype and you can relate to that, then people or your customers will relate to you in a certain way more consistently. So you get this kind of clearer idea of who you are and how you relate to people. So what we've done is there's between 12 to 16 in any model. We've built a model that I'd like to share with you today. Essentially, the first thing to note is the difference between a stereotype and an archetype. So a stereotype is something that's superficial. So we'll remember in the 80s it was sensitive new age guys, and that merges into metrosexuals. It's all kind of fatty, trendy moving. An archetype actually has its roots grounded in an eternal truth, a universal truth. So you can get an archetype that holds true for Virgin and Domestos, the same archetype, two different brands, two different categories, but they both tap into something called the hero, something that's eternal and true and we all relate to. So let's get into the model. So the 12 archetypes, I'll just introduce them, I'll show you how to fit together. So the innocent, this is made famous by Innocent Smoothies out of the UK that Nudie Juice modelled itself on in the Australian market. So wholesome, pure, giving and true. The explorer, that's about sort of self-actualization. So the Neo character in the Matrix was a classic self-actualization. So moving from one point to another. And brands facilitate that, are explorer brands. The sage, so thinker, reflective, wise. IBM's a classic sage brand, a source of knowledge. Professional services tend to have an element of sage as a sort of a category foundation. The hero, so Virgin and Apple tap into the hero quite a lot. A brand that's out to right wrongs, to bust through category norms, and is really out to champion the customer cause. We have the outlaw. So Golf Punk was very famous for an outlaw archetype, which is their positioning was you don't get it and we don't care. More iconic, a Harley Davidson. And certainly Virgin and Apple sort of started on that outlaw flank. The magician, so wonderful moments of transition. So when you open a bottle of Coke and summer pops out the top, that's the wonderful magician archetype brought to life. The regular guy, so it's accessible, it's real, it's approachable. So Coon Cheese, VB Beer, very accessible, regular guy archetypes. And then the lover, which is passionate, indulgent, sexy. So a lot of the sports car, Ferrari, Porsche, Louis Vuitton, all those brands tap into the lover archetype. Here we have the jester. So 3Mobile was probably quite unsuccessful in applying the jester. There's always caution there. So when 3Mobile did it, it wasn't that funny when your calls were dropping out. So just a caution of jester. A lot of the beer brands tap into that archetype. So Colton Draft has had some success with the jester as well. The caregiver, so altruistic, fair giving. So the Body Shop, Sanitarium, they're classic caregiver brands that are really out to do good. The creator, so Walt Disney was a classic creator as an individual, whereas Walt Disney was probably more Walt Disney, the company, was more probably the magician archetype. So you have the creator and the magician often work together. And then the ruler, so Microsoft, a classic ruler brand, or brands that rise to the top of the category and lead the way. So they're the 12 archetypes, and what we've done and what's interesting about it is the way you organise them. So up the top we have leadership and confidence. To the left we have knowledge and reassurance. Down the bottom we have trust and partnership. And to the right we have anti-establishment and excitement. And in organising it in those quadrants, you can actually see not only where you gravitate to, but what's the opening within your category. So you might see that everybody might be playing in a particular quadrant. There's a real opportunity to go somewhere else to have a new relationship with customers, and it opens up new opportunities and new brand relationships. So here's some examples of brands that, certainly from my point of view, fit those archetypes. I've talked about some of them today. So across the top, Microsoft is the ruler, IBM is the sage, Apple is the hero, Nokia is the explorer, and Virgin as the outlaw. When Branson drives a tank down the street, that's very much the outlaw. In the middle, you've got Kraft there, and Intel as the creator. Down the bottom, the Body Shop, Innocent as Evian, Porsche as the lover, 3 is the jester, and then Coke is the magician. So it's not right or wrong, it's very much a personal relationship, but certainly for me, they're brands that seem to fit those archetypes. Now, the closer you can align your brand to one archetype, obviously the more consistent you'll be, the more relatable you'll be. So the 3-step model that Step Change has developed is find an archetype and then define the nuances. And what that means is pick 4 words that are consistent with that archetype that define your expression of the brand. No more than 4, and it's often a really great game to play where if you want to add one more word around the side, you need to take one off. And then continually contemporize. And the way we have a model is we say to the left we have an influencer archetype, which is a foundation. So obviously for some categories there are norms. So for professional services, there's going to be an element of the sage because you're giving advice. We put that as an influencer or a foundation archetype that you just need to be aware of and not acting consistent with, but it's not your core. Your core archetype sits in the middle. It's what you need to hit, and all your communications, your staff should be aware of it, and everything you do should be consistent with that archetype. Around that, you have up to 4 clarification words, and then to the right, you might pick another archetype card that's the influencer. So something that takes you forward, you keep an eye on, and brings that level of spice. So there was just an example that we did for a cooperative called Future Thread, which had as their foundation archetype the sage, so don't act inconsistent with a sage. At their core was the explorer, taking brands to places where they wouldn't necessarily go. So their advertising line was world's next practice, which is a very exploratory positioning. And then the magician, so those wonderful moments of transition and magic. So that's the way their archetype set came together. So sage is the foundation, explorer is the core, and then magician is the influencer. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you've got any questions, then please get in contact with me via LinkedIn. Probably a great way to take questions. And if you found it valuable, then we'd love to know. All the best, and we'll see you next time for another Brand Box walkthrough.